Alrighty, good morning everyone. Happy Wednesday of Denver Startup Week. We made it, right? Day 3, we're here. We appreciate you being with us this morning. We're really excited to kick off this morning's Ignite session with our session, Living in a Marvel Movie, How Quantum is Changing World from the Mountain West. I want to thank some of our sponsors who make this programming possible. Thank you to Amazon, our presenting sponsor, and Capital One Cafe and the Downtown Denver Partnership, our Titan sponsors. We really appreciate their support, and they enable us to continue to make Denver Startup Week free for the community. So if you see them out and about, give them a wink or maybe a thumbs up. I know they would appreciate it. But I would like to kick off our session. So it is my pleasure to introduce Zach Yerushamy.
Testing that out. Okay, that works. Hi, well, and Adina, thank you so much, and Eric, who I saw moseying around. Anyways, thank you everybody for coming here. Before I kick off, who has had a Quantum 101 before? Where are the who has a physics degree or a chemistry degree? Okay. Okay, similarly, who can answer like the chemical composition of a compound metal oxide semiconductor? Okay, so a little bit the point of this is to say it's helpful to have an intuitive understanding of the potential of a technology, but you don't necessarily need to know the physics exactly of how it works. CMOS, the thing that I just said, is the core technology that powers camera phones. So ubiquitized, it's foundational to at least social media life all around us. Now quantum is the building blocks of life, so in some ways we're very familiar with it. But we don't have to have a perfect understanding of it. Intuitive is really important, but perfect understanding we don't need in order to hopefully have an intuitive sense on the impact it can have on all of our lives. And so when I think about quantum, and I want to just do a couple minutes as a 101, when I start offending people's intelligence, yell at me. But just to give a baseline, I think we're all pretty familiar with Moore's law. It's the observation, not a law of nature, but an observation that as transistors size, it shrinks, and we can double the density every 2 years, we get an accompanying doubling in compute power. Now there's a tiny problem that the transistors can't get any smaller. They're reaching their atomic limits. And that's not great if we want more compute power, but particularly if we look out into the world for a particular set of problems, those of the atomic realm, those of the quantum realm, because of their nature and because of the limitations with semiconductor technology, if we want to solve those problems, which relate to drug discovery and curing cancer and chemistry and material science, pretty important stuff and climate change, all of these really basic problems, we will not be able to use current technology, much less an extrapolation of that current technology, even with the best AI on the planet, to actually get there. And that's because they grow exponentially in nature. And what do I mean by that? You take something like penicillin. It's 41 atoms. It's not the most complex molecular structure. It's not interacting with other things, just penicillin itself. Because of the limitations, right, there's no more cowbell with Moore's law and with existing semiconductor technology. Because of those limitations, if we wanted to model penicillin with existing transistor technology, we could theoretically do it. But there's a tiny problem. We would need something like 10 to the 86 transistors, right? That's a lot. That's literally more atoms, that's literally more transistors rather than there are atoms in the observable universe. We kind of have to use all the resources of the universe in order to model something as simple as penicillin, because it's just not all that tractable. But in 1981, this brilliant scientist, Richard Feynman, said, well, let me think about that. What if we could rethink of what a computer is, and we could say, how do we build a computer in some ways on the similar building blocks of nature for the things that we're trying to model? I feel like that would be a lot more efficient. And if you could do that, instead of needing more transistors than there are atoms in the observable universe, you would only need 286 of these units, of these bits, quantum bits, in order to perfectly define the Hamiltonian, as they would frame it, for penicillin. And because the quantum realm, it grows exponentially in its capability, when you add a 287th quantum bit, qubit, it's not just a little bit better, but it's penicillin interacting with its neighbor. And by the time that you've gotten to 1 million quantum bits, qubits, it's not just a little bit better, it is you walk into your doctor's office with what today would be a death sentence, and you get tested, diagnosed, and they print you a medicine that has you walking out cured, fundamentally cured, because it can represent each of the atomic structures that would be in your body. And that's the promise of the quantum revolution that is in some ways right on our doorstep. And so that's why governments from around the world, some who are friendly, certainly the US government, and some of our biggest geostrategic competitors are laser focused on a technology that we think would define our future. And I know for the set of folks that were kindly able to join today, we're going to go a bit deeper into that, because as folks talk about quantum, they think of Marvel movies, but actually so much of this revolution has not only happened already, things like laser technology and atomic clocks and things that we use on a daily basis, the atomic bomb and nuclear reactors, but disproportionately that has been realized here in the Mountain West. And so I'd like to call up the panel here, Corbin Tillman-Dick, who's a co-founder of Elevate Quantum, the organization that I'm CEO of, and was fortunate to be awarded a federal designation for tech hubs. Next, Sally Hatcher, who's the MD of the Buff Fund, really one of the leading folks in the ecosystem here as you think about venture capitalists backing similar technologies. Shrishti Agarwal and Zach Newman. And we'll do a round of introductions. We'll let the folks give their own backgrounds. They'll do better justice than I could. And then we'll have some time for some conversations that I'll help stoke. And we also want to give an opportunity to the audience, so for some Q&A as folks have questions. No conspiracy theories, but other questions. Why don't we start from the front here? Zach, if you give a bit of context to yourself.
Is this on now? Okay, great. Hi, I'm Zach Newman. I'm one of the co-founders of a small company in Boulder called Octa Photonics, and we work on photonic integrated circuits, and that's something maybe we'll get into a little further into the panel.
Zach, eat the mic like you're doing karaoke.
You gotta share my.
Srishti, you're good. Go for it.
Okay, so I'm Srishti Agrawal. I am the co-founder of Mesa Quantum Systems, which is a chip-scale quantum sensing company, again based in Boulder. We recently spun out of CU Boulder and NIST, and we'll talk about the technology.
Hi, I'm Sally Hatcher. I'm originally a co-founder of a couple of companies, Precision Photonics and InBio I am now an investor, so I'm managing partner at Buff Gold Ventures. Little more because we'll be talking about the money. We invest in the pre-seed, seed, and Series A of companies. We usually start with something like $250,000 plus check, and we go up to $3 million in any one company. Our thesis is that you need to have some relationship in some way to CU Boulder. That's remarkably easy in quantum. But we do invest in all types of deep tech, so everything from quantum to climate to drug discovery.
And Sally, if you wanted to just quick potted introduction, what you alluded to it there. What's CU's role in the quantum industry? How did a lot of that happen here?
So CU and NIST have a phenomenal long relationship of working together on the early quantum efforts. And that goes with JILA, the Joint Institute of Laboratory Astrophysics, and just a phenomenal amount of work that has happened over the past 50 to 60 years. I believe both of these two are out of some aspects of those programs, but as a matter of fact, NIST funds 40 PhDs a year at CU, so there's a really tight interconnect. And then out of the labs that have done a bunch of Nobel Prize winning work, Eric Cornell, Dave Wineland, bunch of folks, Jan Hall, those people and that work have been spun out around the world. So labs in Santa Barbara have an origination here in Boulder, as do Planck, which is PLANQ in Munich, I believe, again, had a degree at CU. So the quantum world does have this phenomenal node that is here in Colorado.
The one observation that is just coming to me now, in quantum, people will add extraneous Qs into anything. CU is the only quantum group that has taken out the Q. You have qubit and you replaced it with a C, which is aside from the 4 Nobel Prizes that CU, it's literally half the Nobel's award in the last 30 years. That might be the most historic achievement in quantum.
I'm actually
it's replacing the Q. Sorry.
And I'm Corbin Tillemandick, founder and CEO of Maybell Quantum. We build quantum infrastructure. So while actually, most of us on this stage are kind of infrastructure players, but you hear a lot about the qubit builders, the IBMs, the Googles, Microsoft, Amazon, and then a whole bunch of startups, D-Wave and Rigetti and PsiQuantum. All of those folks are figuring out how to make qubits. In order to make their qubits work, they have to cool them to almost absolute zero and have to communicate with them. That's what my company does. We cool you to almost absolute zero, and we let you communicate with your qubits. And we are a 3-year-old startup based here, raised a $30 million Series A in February, have grown from, 16 people at the start of this year to over 50 now, and sold systems in 8 countries. Doing pretty well. Things are going great.
So we'll transition to a couple of questions that I drew up in no particular order. So we've heard a little bit, I think folks, when they think of quantum, they go to quantum computing, which is awesome. Again, if we realize that, it will be as important in the next 50 years, maybe 100 years, maybe 1,000 years to human civilization as semiconductors were the last. But what's interesting, and what I think, at least as I came to it, underappreciated, is this quantum thing is not science fiction. It's not something that we have yet to realize. We use these technologies on an everyday basis. And even the next evolution of them in quantum sensing is, I think, much closer than people realize. And really one of the pioneers for that is Mesa Quantum. And Shrishti, I'm curious, what's this quantum sensing thing? What's the legacy there? And what role do you guys play in realizing that opportunity for the ecosystem in the country?
Yeah, so I think quantum sensing can be thought of as, so it uses very similar fundamental principles that quantum computing is based on, where atoms have peculiar properties of superposition, entanglement, which we are able to exploit to do better computing, and also improve sensing. What quantum sensing basically does is these atoms are extremely sensitive to changes in magnetic field, electric fields. They can be made sensitive to changes in gravitational fields. So that allows us to, being able to measure that allows us to create sensors which are extremely precise, way more precise than what we've been able to achieve classically. And so that's the broad field of quantum sensing. It includes magnetic field sensors, it includes particle sensors, it includes time sensors. And that's kind of what we at Mesa Quantum are currently focused on, which is chip-scale atomic clocks. The difference between where quantum computing is and quantum sensing primarily is that quantum computing is still in the stage of a lot of innovation and kind of demonstrating prototypes. Quantum sensing is also in that stage, but we've also been able to commercialize quite a bit. Like even in our Boulder ecosystem, we have companies like Long Path Technologies, which are building these systems to measure particle counts, which already are being deployed at commercial scales. We have companies building magnetometers too, which are used for brain imaging. The 2 companies actually which are doing a phenomenal job at it. At Mesa Quantum, our focus is that, so every novel technology goes through a phase of innovation and then a phase of engineering, which allows us to scale it at mass. So what we are focused on at Mesa Quantum is kind of that transition from novel science to engineering, which allows us to scale these technologies and kind of bring it out for commercial applications in a way that has not happened as much in quantum before. And so that's kind of where our focus is based.
And Shrishti, if you give a bit of context, so there's position, navigation, and timing. What role do quantum sensors play today in that? And then what's the future hold if you're able to realize these capabilities, even timelines around that? How does that change for military, for commercial, or for an everyday individual's experience to root it there?
Absolutely. I think quantum, like atomic clocks, are the first quantum sensors which got developed, and it's been out there since 1950s. Our GPS technologies today rely on these quantum sensors. It's literally just atomic clocks on satellites which beam out time signals, and we use that for navigation. But we also use them for synchronizing time across our entire infrastructure. So from power grids to telecommunication to literally every digital ecosystem is like dependent on GPS. And so those sensors have been out there. What our atomic clock technologies, future atomic clock technologies would allow us to do is also become more resilient against issues with GPS. So GPS is incredible. It is one of the most exciting and important core technologies that power our economy, but it's also very vulnerable. It can be easily jammed, it can be easily spoofed, and with the change in geopolitics that we've seen in the last couple of years, we see how important and how the importance of a resilient ecosystem there. So atomic clocks would, in the short term, help in time synchronization without requiring GPS. And the goal is eventually we build these PNT systems where you have not only an atomic clock, but the entire inertial navigation system, which is quantum, like quantum accelerometers, gyroscopes, and you don't even hopefully need an external GPS signal. So you're completely unjammable, unspoofable systems for your autonomous navigation.
And just on that, the thing as I came to this, the US military, they'll hear PNT, position, navigation, and timing. Even before the war in Ukraine, this was a big old problem. And as we've seen after, this is literally rated existentially important. And so much so that the DoD has put out a call that if you can, is it right, if you get the bomb down to the bill of materials down to $300 a pop, they buy 1 million of them a year?
Yeah, there is
right, that's one customer.
Just one customer which prints its own money, so always a good customer, and willing to buy 1 million of these clocks each year. And even in Ukraine, what we saw was very interesting. So there were these areas which had these resilient timing systems, and they still maintained communication. And we could see where you did not have resilient timing systems, they didn't have these chip scale clocks, but even the traditional larger clocks, they substantially made a difference in just maintaining communication as well. Like even apart from all that was all the impact in the military, just even for
and it was quite scary to see how planes, commercial aviation in adjacent countries were getting knocked out because of the GPS. So it's a fundamental thing.
World right
exactly.
Now. Like I think there are like thousands of spoofing attacks each week right now. So it is, I think, the most crucial.
Well, and people talk about Ukraine for spoofing. Newark was grounded for 12 hours one day because a truck driver didn't like the fact that his boss was tracking him with GPS. So he bought on Amazon a $50 tool to block the GPS signal, drove by Newark, and they grounded the entire airport. So this is a problem that it is really easy to spoof GPS intentionally, unencrypted signals so that we can all benefit from them, right? If you have redundancy with a atomic clock the size of a coffee bean that consumes milliwatts of energy, which is what Srishti is building right now, then suddenly you don't need to depend just on these 20-odd satellites for that signal. You can go into a tunnel, you can go underground, you can be in an area where bad actors or dumb actors are messing things up, and you can be safe and resilient and redundant. It's incredible technology. And again, it's another one of those things developed here in Colorado, being commercialized here in Colorado, and an essential part of this quantum future that we're all working towards.
Yeah, and on the unintentional note, like a recent incident, like this was a 2017 incident. They were trying to decommission a GPS satellite, And they introduced 13 microseconds of error in doing so in one of the satellites. That led to like power grids not working in certain areas, the 911 services being down in Canada and US, major outages in factories across UK. So the impact of something, and they corrected it like I think within a day or like a few hours, and yet it had that sort of impact. Just goes on to say how reliant we are on something which is so jammable and so non-resilient.
And Zach, I saw you had a comment or two on this as well.
Yeah, am I allowed to go off script slightly?
I mean, depends on how much off script, right?
Well, you can get me back
I didn't
on.
bring my tinfoil hat, so if you're
Okay.
going to go that off script.
Okay, well, I have two comments actually. The first one is, these types of quantum systems that we use that are all over the world right now, they're not just used in military systems. They're totally part of your day-to-day lives. They're in telecommunications. They're in your phone systems. They're in our financial timing systems, how we make all the super fast transactions in finance, and these things are, our world at this point is heavily reliant on quantum sensors, like we're discussing. So it's really relevant across many fields and applications. So it's a very cool thing.
And Zach, what role so one of the things that we found during COVID is supply chain really matters, and stepping back from that, when we look at the CHIPS Act, the focus on US semiconductor manufacturing capacity, supply chain is pretty important. What role did photonics play in all this? And
sure, yeah.
Where you move the needle on
Okay,
that.
well, I have one more off-script
What is
comment.
photonics, by the way? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, that first.
So
and
the
then.
second one is, how many people are familiar with quantum systems? Is everybody here is? Okay, that's a small, can I take like 30 seconds to give a sort of high-level description of what a quantum system is?
Go for it. Let's hear it.
So basically, when we talk about quantum, we're nominally referring to some kind of light-matter interaction. And this happens, the universe is all just light-matter interactions. Actually, there's dark matter too. But, everything that we observe has a lot to do with light-matter interactions. And the light from these lamps hitting the sofas and warming them up, that's light-matter interaction. But that's a very complex light-matter interaction. And when we talk about quantum systems, we're talking about systems where we isolate the system to a very small number of atoms, a very specific transition, an electronic or light electromagnetic transition of an atom. And in that way, we can control the system very well. And similarly, all these atoms that we work with in these quantum systems are very sensitive to the outside environment. So, on one hand, what makes them very controllable and very reliable also makes them sort of very good at being a sensor, like what Srishti works on. So basically, you can think of it as simple atomic system with some kind of laser system interacting with it, or electric field. Okay, that's my intro to quantum.
That is a physicist's intro to quantum.
Okay, yeah.
You've all gotten your master's degree from CU. It's officially awarded now.
Can I give a
Corbin, please.
So if we're doing the intro to quantum thing, physicists will explain it that way. I'm not a physicist, right? I have an engineering and economics background, spent 10 years as a strategy consultant, and came into this industry because I had sat down with enough physicists. I founded BCG's quantum practice to realize that they were all incredibly excited about this thing, and they were all convinced that this is going to transform humanity in fundamental ways. And I'd never seen physicists universally excited about anything, right? And
they're excited about the universe.
Also true.
And the reason this matters is the universe is governed by two distinct sets of laws. We know this, you've heard this, but it's worth spending a moment on it. The first is the laws of classical mechanics, right? That covers everything from you throw a ball up and the ball comes back down to special relativity. It's a lot of stuff, and it's all of the stuff that we interact with consciously and regularly, right? But there is this entirely separate set of laws, the laws of quantum mechanics, that govern the very small and the very cold, right? If you can get something to a small enough, simple enough system photonically that you can control individual interactions between individual subatomic particles, then you are manipulating quantum mechanics. Or if you can cool something down to almost absolute zero, so that the vibration of the atoms themselves from heat and the formation of quasi-particles, this kind of effervescent foam of nothingness that exists at the smallest scale in the universe, all of that gets quieted down enough to manipulate it. Then again, you can control and manipulate these quantum states. And if you can do that, then you get to a world where we're doing the things that Zach talked about earlier: ending infectious disease, curing cancer, turning back the clock on climate change. Because all of those things fundamentally depend on interactions between molecules. And if you can fully understand those and fully control those, you can utilize that knowledge and that control to fundamentally change the world. And so when Srishti is building chip-scale atomic clocks, she is leveraging those smallest interactions to understand exactly where and when you are, space-time, right? And by understanding that, we can leverage that for resilient comms, for resilient position and navigation, for all of these things that matter to us day to day. And you can do that with just a couple particles that are sensitive to the environment and therefore make great sensors. The bigger, harder problem, the one that IBM and Google and Microsoft and Amazon and all these companies are working on, that is how we get a lot of these qubits to behave well together so that we can use them for compute. And that's what lets us go to the next evolution of really, it'll be as profound as anything we've done. Supercomputers today, the most powerful supercomputers in the world, have more in common with tally marks on a cave wall or an abacus in a first grade classroom than they do with a quantum computer. That's not like hyperbole, that's not an analogy, that is a statement of how they work. They work more like an abacus than they do like a quantum computer. This is a level of transformation ahead of us that truly defies our imagination. And I'm excited enough about it to leave the partnership at BCG and not pay myself for a couple years building this startup. It's a big deal.
And the thing to realize for the folks in this room is we're at the center of it. This is the Silicon Valley for quantum. And it is that way because going back 80 years into the New Mexico desert, the pioneering physics of this whole industry happened right in our backyard. And because of that innovation with atomic clocks and laser technology, we literally use a lot of those same systems to then give us an unfair edge at the innovation for that next level, which is quantum computing. And so when you look here, we have 3,000 people in the commercial quantum ecosystem alone, really by dint of the work that has come out of CU. And when you hold that against other ecosystems that people think of, we are about 60 to 100 times the scale of other places. But it's way too early in this race. Unless the folks sitting here are able to successfully realize their capabilities and their companies, because of the special nature of our ecosystem, it's not just that Colorado doesn't do well, isn't out in front. We are in some ways so much ahead and so much emblematic of the US ecosystem. It's really, frankly, powers China is nipping at the heels of the entire globe in this capability. It's the PRC that realizes it, and with the explicit goal of dominating every single part of that supply chain. So it's something that we have to work hard against. Sally, I'm curious, from your background as you approach this, clearly some big opportunities in quantum. Some of them were here. You started a lot of those companies, one of the most successful entrepreneurs in our ecosystem. Some of them are on the cusp, some of them are future looking. How does an investor think about how to approach advanced technology development here? And folks should understand, Sally is not just an important VC. She's one of the most storied, successful entrepreneurs working in quantum technologies and laser technologies that we have in our ecosystems. It's a real honor for her to be here.
Wow, what a build-up. I better have a great answer.
I would expect no less.
So, short answer is to go back that hardware is hard, and if you are going to build a successful company in quantum, you really need to think about having the additional time and resources to get where you're trying to go. So it's made harder by the fact that the market is not current. So it's a future market. Quantum computers don't exist commercially today, and they're a good ways out. So you can't sell a product into a future market. And that being said, there's a lot of quantum companies that are very well funded now with some very large valuations that are working on it. I was just thinking about more companies that are related to our ecosystem, and IonQ, Quera, Air, Atom Computing, all of these have touch points in our ecosystem. They're already working on the whole quantum computer question. So when I think about getting funded, I think about tackling a problem with a market that's closer. And these three people are all doing that. And that is what I did. But, building the refrigeration capacity so that every researcher who wants to work on quantum computing is calling Maybell. Working with quantum sensing, which is a current market and a present need, as I think we've amply covered. And then Octave has just brought in quite a bit of money to non-dilutive to build the capacity to help other startups with incubator space and lab capacity so that we can generate more startups. So all of that is to say that I think the company needs to pick a very specific problem that they can solve and that they can figure out the unique product market fit. And then they need to figure out how are you going to get it funded and how are you going to bring the resources around it. How will you build a team that is going to be world-class in order to help you outperform?
Thank you, Sally. And just kind of indicative of that, Zach, again, what's this like photonics thing and what are photonic integrated circuits? What role could they play? What's the timeline for that? What are you guys doing there?
Sure, yeah. Okay, so my company, Octave Photonics, works on these things called PICs, or photonic integrated circuits, and that's essentially just a fancy way of saying computer chips that route light instead of electrons. And what's really cool is that oh, by the way, our telecommunication system relies heavily on these photonic integrated circuits already. So this has been development that's been going on for 20 years. It turns out that the types of materials that are used for our telecommunication systems rely on silicon, and silicon is not transparent to visible wavelengths. It's transparent at telecom wavelengths, like 1.5 nanometers. Oh, sorry. Is that better? Anyway, most of the quantum systems that we've been talking about thus far rely on visible wavelengths of light. And so what's needed now is sort of a revolution in the types of materials that we use for these photonic integrated circuits. So my company is one of the companies that works on sort of advanced photonic integrated circuits that use new materials that are visibly transparent and also have something called optical nonlinearity. But the really cool thing about these chips is that we can leverage CMOS semiconductor fabrication technology that's been in development since basically 1970. And these are the UV lithography systems and the deposition systems that we're talking about with TSMC and Global Foundries and all these large Samsung semiconductor companies. We can use the exact same tooling to make chips that are relevant for these quantum systems, like quantum sensors that Srishti works on, or quantum computers.
And transition a little bit, the observation there, what hit me is a couple things. In order to realize these quantum systems, both quantum sensing, which is kind of here and also a little bit around the corner, and then definitely quantum computers, we will not be able to do that without these photonic integrated circuits. This will be the wiring in sorts, or the picks and shovels needed for that gold rush. But stepping back, thinking of gold rush, Corbin, I'm curious, kind of VC hat on, market sizing hat on, how big is the economic opportunity in quantum? And even as a kind of, quote, small part of that, people talk about you as a refrigerator salesman, sometimes jokingly, probably not. Really root me. How big is that opportunity? How do we realize that here?
Yeah, it's kind of wild because at this point, there's nothing we're better at as a species than building transistors, right? We've made more transistors than we've taken breaths as a species. 13 sextillion of them. That's a wild number. Quantum is at a beginning of a journey that is likely to become that big. So today, we don't know everything that these systems will be good for. We know a few things. We know the molecular stuff. They will be better for that. And we know breaking all encryption. They will be better for that. And with those use cases, the smartest economics minds out there have identified $3.5 trillion of new value that quantum will drive. That makes it larger than the US healthcare industry, kind of in line with financial services, right? It's a wildly large number. And that number is somebody in the 1950s saying, this is what computers are good for, right? It is almost certainly a wild understatement. Based on that number, look at my company, which sells fridges, really special fridges. You Google a picture of a quantum computer, you'll see this beautiful golden chandelier. You'll see presidents standing next to it, celebrities standing next to it. They think they're standing next to a quantum computer. They're not. They're standing next to a refrigerator. They don't actually leave the quantum computer in there for the pictures usually. But that's beside the point. The fridge market today is about $1 billion, and in this pre-quantum advantage era, when quantum is a research technology with almost no actual applications, quantum computing, we'll probably get to $3–4 trillion in pre-quantum advantage market. Post-quantum advantage, based on this 1950s estimate of what the computers will be good for, that goes up to $150 to $200 billion for the fridges, right? We don't know everything these systems will be good for. We don't know how much economic value they'll drive. Based on what we do know, the numbers are mind-boggling.
And that's for a component, an important component, but that's
one
like a
piece.
component of it. It's
yeah, and similarly, the numbers are similarly large on the PIC side. You know, what Zach is building. You can build a prototype quantum computer without PICs, but it's the size of a basketball court, right? He can take that and shrink it down to the size of a thumbnail and do that, maybe a few thumbnails, but do that by building these integrated circuits. Today, when you want to modify your computer, you take a mirror this big, you pull out one mirror, you put in another mirror, you columnate it, you make sure everything's lined up perfectly, and then you've tweaked your computer a little bit. And Zach does that on a chip, right? These are the foundational elements that will create the NVIDIAs, the TSMCs, the companies that, we aren't necessarily as consumers using them, except when you pull out your phone, you're using it, you just don't know it, right? And that's what Zach and I have focused on as companies.
And what makes me so excited, if you look at every major advanced technology ecosystem that dominates their particular industry on the planet, particularly so semiconductors, they have the best, not just gold, but they actually have the best picks and shovels, right? The things that make your research and your realization of those capabilities 10x more effective than anyone else. And so by building the building blocks of these, by having the best enabling hardware, it also makes us most likely to have the fundamental science innovation. The thing I want to call on is, if we're doing anything right, go ahead, Sally, of course.
Can I add just to that thought, is that
please.
all of this enabling hardware ends up enabling the next generation of software as well. So like
Absolutely.
Microsoft last October was talking about how quantum computers will be used to train AI.
Oh, yeah.
I have something to add to that too. In addition to quantum computers, all these types of hardware systems are useful for a pretty wide range of other applications that aren't quantum, which is even maybe more exciting because we know there's going to be even, there's many markets just like the quantum market going
Nothing
forward.
is more exciting than quantum. That's the one thing you have to take away from this talk.
Sorry.
Nothing is more exciting. And if you haven't done that job, or if you buy it hook, line, and sinker. Shrishti, I'm curious, now that we all know that quantum is the most exciting thing ever to happen ever, how could you work in this industry? What are the types of jobs? How can I get a job at Mesa and help realize this future now?
Okay, I'll start with like broadly how, what are the skill sets required for the industry, and I think it is very diverse, unlike what we assume it to be. The general thought process is that you have to have a PhD in quantum to be able to work in Mesa Quantum or any of these companies, which is not true. In the early stages, you are more dominated by PhDs. So right now, we do have 2/3 of our team, which is PhDs, but we anticipate that only decreasing as we grow. So you need really good mechanical engineering talent. You need electronics talent. You need people who've interfaced with semiconductor industry to kind of help with manufacturing. You need other experts, like depending on what domain you're working on. So I think it is extremely varied. Even there are a lot of skills for which you don't necessarily need to even have gone through a master's program. You can just get trained for those specific skills and get involved in these companies. One thing that CU Boulder is doing, which is really well, and I know Maybell is involved in it too, which is a Quantum Forge program. So what they do as a part of that is they have these undergraduate students work with companies on specific projects, which allows them to understand what skill sets are required and get trained in that regard. So Mesa Quantum, Maybell, and a lot of other companies in the ecosystem are sponsoring that. And the goal is to just build a hiring pipeline off of it, so that different stages of academic, like we can have a very diverse company with different skill sets and experience.
And on this stage, you kind of have the whole spectrum where Mesa is over half PhDs. Maybell is almost 90% folks without advanced degrees, right? So the vast majority of my employees are welders, machinists, technicians, folks who are building the stuff of quantum by taking big pieces of metal, turning them into smaller pieces of metal, and then joining them together in ways that don't leak. Now, in order to design those systems, you need a PhD, right? In order to design the fundamentals of it. In order to engineer those systems, you probably need a degree in engineering. But in order to build those systems, you can be somebody who barely finished high school, was experiencing homelessness, but had good attention to detail, and ended up now becoming a core crucial member of my team, where the silver nanostructures that make up the heat exchangers at the bottom of these systems, those are the secret sauce. Those are the special thing that I used to say only a dozen folks on Earth knew how to build those really well. My co-founder is one of them. Now, it's my co-founder and this fantastic young woman who joined our team. We didn't realize she was experiencing homelessness at the time, and she's just kicking butt. And it is so exciting to see her go from where she was to stability and a skill set, and now starting college and working while in school. That's the sort of thing that can happen in the quantum industry, because the jobs in this industry, Zach likes to say, look a lot more like aerospace than math. And it means that, yes, you need the full spectrum, but that full spectrum certainly includes folks who didn't realize that they could be part of quantum when they applied for a tech job.
And so there we have a few minutes left. I want to open it up to Q&A from the audience. Questions, feedback. Again, please no conspiracy theories. We've gotten a couple of those. Oh gosh, lots. The first in the back.
We heard. Yeah. So
okay, sorry, I speak into microphones. We're gonna try that again. Do you want to stand up and then introduce yourself, even, so your friends know who you are?
I'm John. Sorry for the loud microphone. Yeah. So hopefully everybody kind of caught the beginning. I was mostly wanting to get at that question of what's your gut tell you about how far out we are, not necessarily from the productization of the thing, but from the first computer that can do that for the first time?
So the first time, people often lump quantum in with fusion and other things like that that have been in the future for a long time. Quantum's not that. The first ever 2-bit quantum computer was built in 2009 in Boulder. That's the first time we did this as a species. The math existed before that, but the practical implementation is 15 years old, right? In those 15 years, we've gone from a 2-qubit system that was good for literally nothing to systems with thousands of qubits that can do new science. They don't have commercial applications, but if you are trying to define the quench state for an array of magnetic dipoles, you could put the biggest supercomputers in the world to work on that problem for 1 billion years and they wouldn't be able to do it. Or you can do it in either an IBM or D-Wave system in a few seconds, right? That's exciting new science. There are qubit builders who will enthusiastically tell you that we are 3 years from broad quantum advantage. I don't think that's probably true. I think we are probably 3 to 5 years from a few big kind of moon landing type moments. Zach talked about defining the Hamiltonian for ammonia. Why does that matter? Well, 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions and energy is used to produce ammonia for fertilizer. Without that fertilizer, we can't feed 8 billion people, so it's important that we do that. It's worth spending 3% of global energy on that. But we know for a fact that there are bacteria that can do this with like 99.99% less energy. We see them doing it. Bill Gates is trying to get them to do it on command, and they haven't been successful yet, but I hope he is. But the other way that we could do this is figuring it out with a quantum computer, understanding the pathways, and doing that. That might happen in 5 years.
Well,
but before we're pulling out our cell phone and having a weather prediction that says it's going to start raining in 3 minutes and 45 seconds exactly where you are, using a quantum sensor to tell you exactly where you are, and a live weather model that's run in that moment, that's probably 15, 20 years out. Doesn't matter when this is a technology that's going to define civilization for a century. 15, 20 years is a pretty quick blink of an eye in the history of civilization.
Well, and if you look at drug discovery, the rule of thumb is innovation to market in about 30 years, mRNA, innovation to market, gene sequencing, innovation to market, roughly the 20, 30 years. So if we're talking about something that defines the trajectory of the human race on a 5-ish year basis, much less if you look at quantum sensing technology, we've been doing that for decades, it feels to us, right, and hopefully to the folks here, that it's worth the punt, especially when that incremental investment amount, $50 to $100 million, could change the trajectory of the human race. For $50 to $100 million, you don't buy a tenth of a fully trained AI model. Just like one shot at that. And so, much less given that there's economic opportunities today, because of the economic opportunity just around the corner, we wake up every day just excited to participate in the industry. I realize we're coming up towards time. Can we have one more question or what?
Yeah, one final question. Yeah. Great. And introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm John Himes, founder of Dynamic Tech Media. So my question is about something that Sally said about Octave Photonics creating a new incubator space for quantum companies here in Colorado. Could you speak a little bit more to that, please?
Maybe I should defer that question.
Okay, Zach. Okay. Okay. So Elevate Quantum, the group I help lead, Corbin helped found, everybody here is a close supporter of. I saw Dan in the audience, and maybe call him out. So we are the only major place-based, we both as an organization and a region, the first major place-based investment the US government has ever made in the quantum industry. Our job is to radically accelerate the pace of innovation for, again, something we think is pretty darn important. And we do that by focusing on the pain points that hold back us from, as a country, being the fastest, smartest, best for those generations. The 3 big pain points we focus on, the first is you need these pick things in order to survive as a company, much less thrive. So we're going to be able to activate that capability. We're going to have a space where if you want to start a company, we'll be having some of his fridges, potentially, if the tender will hopefully, we'll have fridges there so that instead of buying a whole fridge, which could cost you $500 $1 million, you can rent that incrementally and get it instantly. And then we'll also be thoughtful about using that space as an incubator in order to accelerate the speed to have 50 more Mesas, not doing what Mesa does because they're the best, but bringing the next evolution of those with a workforce that is skilled and diverse and doing that right from the beginning. We were awarded that money. It activated about $130 million, maybe $1 billion if you count the private capital that it would realize in July of this year. We'll kick off those activities on the 1st of October. Most of these will be online by the end of 2025. And a lot of that will come online much earlier than that, accelerating literally every core technology and business, hopefully in the quantum sector.
I can just add one thing to that. The funding, the federal part of the funding from that comes from the CHIPS and Science Act, which is a piece of legislation from 2022 that is intended to bring semiconductor manufacturing back from overseas into the United States. And the science part of that is what's funding this development in quantum systems in Colorado. And it's a really revolutionary piece of legislation and something that's very exciting for the science community. So yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, and day before yesterday, the #2 from the Department of Commerce, along with the governor and various members of the congressional delegation, we were all together at a 70-acre campus that is being set up for quantum. It's a Quantum Commons at Arvada that is being given to the industry. Elevate Quantum is going to be there with the lab and the fab and workforce development capabilities, but that's using up 2% of the 70 acres. And so if you're building a quantum company anywhere in the world, and you want the cheapest, best place to scale with the best ecosystem around you, this campus is going to be that. And we're hoping that, as we look back at the Stanford Research Park as the foundation of the last technology revolution, that's what the Quantum Commons is going to be for the quantum century. And that's being built here in Colorado right now. So it's exciting stuff.
And it's here both because of that legacy, and also when we were competing for this, we were outspent as an ecosystem by about 20x to competitors. We only won because the kind of Boulder mindset, the Colorado mindset of give first, we had hundreds, maybe thousands of people in some ways who were pulling in a direction. We outworked the competition 20x. And if we keep that mindset and we have the right assets, there's nothing that can stop this revolution from happening right in our backyard. So thank you guys.
Great.
Please
thank you, Zach. Thank you to all of our speakers who joined us this morning. We certainly appreciate it.